news this week, Intel reveals an operating loss for its Foundry service, but there's some caveats to it. Additionally, some more leaks of Battlemage, this time a shipping manifest, following the leaks that we talked about for the last episode a couple days ago. AMD Zen 5 apparently will be, quote unquote, 40% faster than Zen 4. Absolutely no further elaboration on that. We'll talk about that a little bit. SSD prices appear to be going up, and then also there's a panoramic liquid cooler that is inspired by those large billboards where you have the anamorphic 3D-esque image coming out of it, and you could put it in your computer for like $350. Before that, this video is brought to you by Montech and the King 95 Pro case. The King 95 Pro is a dual chamber enclosure with configurable options for storage and power supplies. The K95 has a deep 35mm cable channel for management, support for dual power supplies if you want it, which could be useful for a Threadripper system, and ample radiator and fan mounting options scattered around the top, back, bottom, side, and front of the case. The front also can be mesh or solid, with the mesh running a higher porosity for more breathability. Learn more at the link in the description below. Up first, Intel revealed that its manufacturing unit posted a $7 billion operating loss in 2023, which is higher than its $5.2 billion losses compared to the previous year. Reuters reported that the unit had a revenue of $18.9 billion for 2023, which is down 31% from $27.49 billion in 2022. The publication added that Intel stock dropped 4.3% after its SEC filing. Intel's reporting is a little complicated and weird though, because unlike TSMC, it also has first-party products, and those products use its first-party fab and manufacturing capabilities. So, as a result, Intel is it's using its own supply. It sells wafers to itself, and depending on how they want to report that in the books, it can affect these numbers drastically. But in reality, Intel doesn't actually have to pay what a third party outside of Intel company would pay to source those same wafers and pay for that same manufacturing. It can get it at least cost because it makes its own wafers and then uses them, at least for most of its products in the CPU side. So there's some semi-arbitrary sort of accounting math and bookkeeping going on between the divisions that makes its reporting a little fuzzier and less straightforward than it would typically be. Regardless, though, in a presentation for investors, Reuters reported that Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger stated 2024, quote, would be the year of worst operating losses for the company's chip-making business, and that it expects to break even on an operating basis by about 2027. Gelsinger attributed bad decisions for its current predicament, highlighting one example where the company decided not to use extreme ultraviolet or EUV machines, which are still relatively new and extremely expensive. They can end up over $150 million, for example, but Intel ended up using older chip-making tools rather than the more potentially cost-effective EUV tools if they already own them. Reuters says that Intel has since switched over to using EUV tools, adding that they, quote, will cover more and more production needs as older machines are phased out. Due to these issues, Intel has had to outsource 30% of its wafers to external companies like TSMC. Reuters says the company intends to bring that down to 20% over time. As part of this too, Intel has an insane amount of capital expenses right now. It is building out one of the largest factories definitely in the US. We've been to it. It's pretty crazy. This is an expansion on its Arizona site, but it's also spending in total, as we understand it right now, about $100 billion to build out factories, or fabs in other words, in Ohio, New Mexico, Oregon, and then again in Arizona. So this capital expense is definitely contributing to some of the drain on Intel's resources. Fab 52 and 62 will not be done for at least another maybe 2 years, 1 to 2 years. So they projected a 3 to 5 year construction timeline for those two new fabrication facilities. Those are the ones in Chandler, Arizona. And they started 2021, September. 3 to 5 years puts it out maybe 2026 if they're on time at the late end of that spectrum. So that will continue going for a while longer before they can actually reclaim any money on it with making things. Now we actually have a really cool fab tour coming up. So separate from all of this discussion, want you all to be aware so you can check it out when it's ready. We've been editing it actually for the last 2 weeks straight now. It's been the main project for me and Vitaly on the team as we work on piecing it together. And it's pretty crazy. We went to see the construction of 2 new fabrication plants, which is relatively undocumented. And then we did a tour of the fabrication facilities, got on experts to talk about it, how it all works. It's basically our engineering discussion videos like we've done in the past, except a fab tour in combination with those. So pretty fun. That's coming up. We can't show a lot of it yet, but you've probably seen a couple drone shot clips from Intel's official B-roll, and then we have all our own B-roll we'll be showing you soon enough in that tour. Okay, next one. A Billboard-styled liquid cooler display. A new company pops up seemingly overnight with an eclectic collection of personnel. This showed a display mounted to the pump block that could potentially be used in the way that some of those panoramic advertising billboards are used to create a 3D pop-out effect. This clip from a Bilibili channel shows the display in action, as does another Bilibili creator's shot of the screen from the event. Gonna go with Tri-X for the pronunciation for now. It's spelled Trix, but some of the Bilibili creators said Tri-X. Anyway, Asetek got up on stage during this company's announcement, which is different because normally Asetek, a supplier of liquid cooling components, pumps, radiators, things like that, for AIO and CLC makers, normally they stay behind the scenes so they can focus on what they do best, which is suing their competitors for making liquid cooling products. Tri-X has also hired an ex-Cooler Master case lead and former board partner employees, so they've kind of gone heavy on who they're sourcing for this. They, as we understand it, attempted to poach some of the US-based product managers and designers or engineers as well for other companies. So there's a lot of money behind this brand out of nowhere, which makes it interesting. As for the cooler, the 360 millimeter liquid cooler, as we understand it, will be priced somewhere in the range of $350, which means now we can get rid of the millimeters at the end of the number and just replace it with the dollar sign. We're finally there. We've done it. We've gotten liquid coolers to $1 per millimeter. A clip from their launch event posted to the company's Bilibili channel shows a 14900K running allegedly at 320 watts PL1, holding a 90-degree result on the 240 CLC, and 86 on the 360. We obviously can't validate these numbers at this time, and the marketing is out in full force. Tri-X says its products are, quote, a new species, and themes them around future archaeology, because this is what humans will reflect on when they excavate cities in thousands of years. Tri-X also, as a brand that started 16 months ago, says that its inclusion of an 8th gen Asetek pump solution, quote, signals the brand's ascent to the top of the tech industry. And frankly, this is a level of humility that we think should be wider spread in the industry. The brand is sticking with what appears to be Italian naming as a theme for its products, so it's introducing the Rota fans and the Luca case. We're looking forward to the tall, Grande and Venti versions of the Luca case. There's enough XL in this industry already. And the Luca will apparently be modular, and they're attempting to go for a floating aesthetic for it. It's a very looks-oriented company so far. So we found these clips from Bilibili uploader Xiaoxi Yanjiu Suo, who briefly shows the case with its side panel removed. The LED base is a one-off for the event, as we understand it, but those angular elements that shoot under the case are the so-called floating aspect. The floating's maybe a bit oversold. We need to see it in person, but it's definitely a different design. We don't know the price of this case at the moment, and the base looks like it moves inward to sort of hide under the center of the case, but we're not 100% sure. Another Bilibili uploader named Aiwan Injian de Lao Gao, which literally means guy who loves hardware or loves playing around with hardware, shows the billboard style that inspired the design, followed by more shots of the cooler. The uploader also shows the Luca case shots from Tri-X's presentation. As for the panoramic cooler, that's the one thing that's really different here because it's using a 6.5-inch, actually massive AMOLED L-shaped display, and Tri-X says that this is supposed to offer an anamorphic view. So in other words, you might get a pseudo 3D pop-out effect from it. Again, similar to those advertising billboards you'd see in, say, Japan, as an example, is the one I've seen on YouTube. So that's kind of what they're going for. Tri-X is definitely focused on looks. It appears to be part of this new wave of quote-unquote luxury computer hardware. And let us know what you think and how you feel about it, because changes in design and this advent of screens At this point, the screens are everywhere. They're on basically every device. Maybe most obvious downside is price, because that blasts the price way more than you'd pay for something that is just a liquid cooler, and that's all it does. That doesn't mean it's bad to have all of the showy stuff, and that does breathe some life into the space of DIY PC building for enthusiasts. However, we are curious at large what you all think, and if this is something that excites you or not. All right, next one. Battlemage is in the news again. So actually a couple days ago, we reported on some leaks about Battlemage appearing in Scisoft's Sandra database. And now there appears to be some more evidence that Battlemage GPUs are on the way. Twitter leaker Momomo_US shared an image showing Battlemage microprocessors G10 and G21 in what appear to be shipping manifests. A slide leak earlier this year indicated the existence of a sub 150 watt G21 GPU along with a sub 225 watt G10 GPU, which would coincide with this latest info. While Intel has confirmed to us that Battlemage is coming, it has not said anything else at this time officially. We don't know product names, prices, release dates. So the two most likely venues for Battlemage to make a formal appearance will be Intel Vision 2024, which is in a few days, basically, it's April 8th to 9th, or Computex. Computex, it has a keynote on June 4th, so Intel will be hosting that. I think it's Pat Gelsinger, the CEO, hosting that one. And we're going to be watching regardless of whether Battlemage is there. But those are the two most likely avenues for further discussion if they're ready to move. Intel has to move soon on Battlemage because last time it kind of lost a major opportunity, a big opportunistic window to strike when the GPU availability was down and or prices were high for its competitors. It did eventually get Alchemist out there just a little later. Obviously, look at the drivers at launch, and it made sense. Like, their alternative would have been probably a complete disaster as opposed to only mostly a disaster that they were able to work through and get into a much better spot now. Battlemage is going through the same thing. They have had hardware for a while. This much we know from a discussion that Intel had with PC World previously, and now it's software refinement as far as we understand. Computex, by the way, we have a massive show lineup. Looks really good. Ton of cool hardware coming out. Can't talk about most of it yet, but there's a lot of really cool stuff to talk about this year. We're excited for it, especially because we're back into ATX case reviews with that Fractal XL that we posted, and looks like there's going to be a lot of cool cases there as well. But we'll see on the silicon side of things. Now, NVIDIA may release its 50 series RTX GPUs as soon as the end of this year. Might be into next year. Depends on which rumors and leaks you want to pay attention to. But the sooner NVIDIA releases that, the more pressure Intel's going to be under, especially if they're targeting a similar price point. And Intel right now, if you go look at the die size of the Arc A750 and the A770, it is massive compared to what you would expect at that price point. So Intel is effectively wrapping its cards in money as it ships them out the door right now for Alchemist. So they're going to have some financial pressure at some point, despite growing this business unit. And that pressure will be worse the later they ship because they're going to be up against much more optimized divisions from NVIDIA and AMD. That's kind of some commentary on that. But next one, according to Kepler L2, a serial leaker online, Zen 5 will be noticeably faster than Zen 4. I will say that this leak is one of those where we question whether or not it goes into a show because the entire sum of its parts is literally this statement, quote, core for core, Zen 5 is greater than 40% faster than Zen 4 in spec, end quote. That's it. Internet is set ablaze. Everyone, including us, now talking about it. Yes, we're self-aware. We added a little bit to the story to try and make it more than a 10-second segment in here. So if the claim's accurate, a couple things. We don't know if that's an average uplift, if it's multi-threaded, single-threaded, best case scenarios, whatever. So there's limited information right now. For some other leaks to aggregate into this, TechSpot reported that Zen 5 architecture is tipped to arrive with AMD's Granite Ridge desktop CPUs, which are expected to launch later this year under the Ryzen 9000 banner. So that'd be a skip over the 8000 series, which is already confusingly in use for the G-Spec APUs. Other upcoming Zen 5 processors include the company's Strix Point APUs, Fire Range laptop CPUs, hopefully they're not hot, that would be awkward, and Strix Halo APUs, which are rumored to release next year. TechSpot also reports that beyond performance increases, Zen 5 will, quote, offer improved efficiency, a repipelined front end, and integrated AI and machine learning optimizations. The AI aspect is not surprising. It's in line with what AMD did for its 8040 refresh in mobile, so we'd expect more of that going forward. Because once again, right now, what the tech companies have discovered is that if you add those two letters to a thin, your sales go up like 100% instantaneously. Microsoft is making big pushes, by the way, for AI and including AI hardware processing, like dedicated capabilities, as it begins to reinvent its OS around this concept. So expect to hear of it and see it a lot more as a dedicated hardware component on the CPUs. Right now, they don't do a whole lot for consumers as that small, basically NPU component, or whatever they are calling it at the different companies. But that's a feature that Microsoft's trying to start leveraging with its Copilot, or however it may name its RIP Cortana replacements. According to TrendForce, NAND flash contract prices are expected to rise by 13 to 18% in Q2. The market intelligence provider reports that enterprise SSDs will bear the brunt of the biggest impact, writing that, quote, enterprise SSD contract prices are forecast to jump by 20 to 25% in Q2. TrendForce notes that this is due to rising demand of cloud service providers across North America and China. TrendForce suggests, however, that consumer space SSD prices won't be as heavily affected as enterprise. It still expects a 10 to 15% increase for end users like most of our audience and us, though. Now, this story, if you haven't been watching hardware news from us for years at this point, you might not have seen this one before, but SSD prices and TrendForce NAND prices, it rotates through almost seasonally, where it's one of the most variable costs in the industry in terms of things that affect what consumers pay very quickly after the cost change to the manufacturers. So you see it go up and down. It has the widest price swings we're used to reporting on and seeing. Right now it's on the upswing. It had a downswing not too long ago. Next one, Google vows to delete data harvested during incognito sessions. A class action lawsuit from 2020 pointed this out, that Google's Chrome incognito mode was about as discreet as a solid snake sneaking around in a cardboard box. As a result of that suit, the Wall Street Journal notes that Google will destroy billions of data points from that improper collection. Engadget elaborates that the Silicon Valley giant will, quote, update its data collection disclosures and maintain a setting that blocks Chrome's third-party cookies by default for the next 5 years. The lawsuit claimed that Google monitored users' activity while informing them that their information was private. And ultimately, that was the problem, was how Google advertised it as being private. Because everybody collects your data. It's like collecting it, but also sort of using language that purely from the actual base words, what do they mean standpoint, misrepresents what the product is doing. That's where Google was on the losing end of things. Engadget reports that in 2019, Google had some interesting internal discussions that, and this is all old news now, but that may have sort of indicated where Google's headspace was at the time of working on all this. The discussion included Google's chief marketing officer concluding that, quote, private was, quote, the wrong term for incognito mode because it risked exacerbating known misconceptions. And then also wrote, we are limited in how strongly we can market incognito because it's not truly private, thus requiring really fuzzy hedging language that is almost more damaging. So there's your quotes for context, but the news here is that, again, Google is going to be deleting the data that it collected for whatever that's worth. Now, when asked for comment, Google said this.
And I would have made millions if it hadn't been for you meddling kids.
Back in 2017, net neutrality was repealed on the argument that it stifled ISP investment and innovation. And as we all know, American internet service providers are constantly innovating. It's what they do best. So as an example of some of the extreme innovation that the ISPs have done in the US, if we have a lot of European viewers, a lot of people all over the world, if you don't live in the US, you might not be privy to just how much we innovate here for internet. So, for example, our internet service provider innovated by charging us $900 per month for 200 megabit per second service. If you want to know why, it's because we've got business in the zoning. Anyway, there's a name for the innovation. It's called having a monopoly. I'm not bitter. It looks like it may be coming back, as the Federal Communications Commission, though, will be voting later this year to potentially reinstate net neutrality. The FCC actually put out a video about net neutrality Promise this one isn't a cut to Scooby-Doo, but here's the clip.
Working to bring back net neutrality, a principle that ensures an open and fair internet where providers treat all online content and applications equally and without bias. Here's how we do this. The FCC would go back to a system where broadband is treated like the essential service it is, because we all need access to it in the digital age. This also gives the FCC the ability to protect the internet in the name of national security and public safety. If there's an internet outage in your area, the FCC could now have the power to work with companies to help fix it. And if bad actors and foreign adversaries are using our networks for nefarious purposes, we would now have additional tools to fight them.
First of all, if you look closely at that clip, they did it. They found the anonymous hacker 4chan. We won't venture into some of these statements because they do definitely get more into the sort of political side of things, like the comments about how the US might, quote, protect the internet. So no comment from us there. We don't go to that side of things. As they verge, however, on more of the technical side and net neutrality, that's obviously relevant to us. So the video points out that there will be voting in early 2024, and Deadline reports that the proposal is, quote, expected to pass. The original discussion around net neutrality many years ago now was largely spurred on by this concept of maybe directly or inadvertently in some ways creating different lanes of speed. So the common nomenclature used in 2017 was this concept of having a fast lane where prioritized traffic gets better speeds or higher bandwidth. That was the crux of the argument back then. As for this iteration of net neutrality and what the law might entail and what they're trying to pass, wait for more information. We'll report on the development, talk about it after the voting, if there's anything to talk about at that time. But that's the news right now. All right, next one, Minisforum releases a tablet, and this is powered by AMD. So Minisforum, of course, well known for the mini PCs at this point. They had a rough start, but they've actually been doing really well lately. And they've released a new tablet. It's their first one called the Minisforum V3. The tablet is equipped with AMD's 8840U processor, similar to the 7840U in this instance series, but it's got a 28-watt part that features 8 cores and 16 threads, 12 RDNA, 3 CUs, and AMD's website lists the 8840U as having a 3.3 gigahertz base clock and a 5.1 gigahertz max boost clock. Now, for its display, the Minisforum V3 comes with a 14-inch 2560 by 1600 resolution screen that offers a 165 hertz refresh rate and features a 100% DCI P3 color gamut. On the audio side, it has 4 speakers. In terms of ports, it's got 2 USB 4 interfaces, an SD card slot, 3.5mm headphone jack, and then for battery, it has a 50.84 watt-hour solution with 65 watt fast charging. For cooling, it's using a dual fan setup with 4 copper heat pipes. The base model costs about 7,000 renminbi, which converts to approximately 967 bucks US. That's just for now anyway. This SKU comes with a keyboard and it's outfitted with 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5 6400 memory, 1 terabyte of storage, and the higher end SKU is 7,200 renminbi, which amounts to about $1,000 US, 995, and comes with a touch pen that supports the MPP 2.6 protocol. Kind of interesting because tablets haven't gotten as much discussion since this new foray of handheld gaming devices. Wouldn't be surprised to see Minisforum going more in that direction too, because handheld gaming is getting so huge right now. There's a lot of vendors. It's the early stages where everyone's going to try something, and most of them will not survive past the first generation. They're going to get knocked out of the market, and then we'll see kind of who survives with their devices. But Valve's looking pretty good. ASUS actually pretty strong, and Lenovo. All three have a huge start. And of course, incumbents like AIO, GPT are still around as well, and they are competing fiercely. But wouldn't be surprised if Minisforum also goes this direction. ASUS reveals the ROG Mjolnir battery bank. I thought this was an April Fool's joke, and apparently so did everyone else, because ASUS launched it close enough to April Fool's Day that on all their materials they had to say explicitly, not an April Fool's joke. In a Twitter post on April 2nd, really not doing themselves favors there, the ASUS ROG page revealed an image of the ROG Mjolnir, which looks like a massive portable battery bank that they're, I guess, marketing to gamers, and it's shaped like Thor's famed hammer. It also has a handle, ensuring its badassness, or is it badassery? While perhaps adding a somewhat practical element to the product, assuming you're worthy enough to lift it. The image says that it's, again, quote, not an April Fool's joke, with the post following up to say, it's real gamers. I feel like I can relate to the company so much more now. The tweet also indicates that more will be revealed soon with a call to action saying stay tuned for more during Computex 24. Looking at the image, we can see 4 3-pronged power outlets along with 2 USB-C and 2 USB Type A connectors. There's also a display that indicates probably how much battery is left on the Mjolnir. Just like imagine Norse mythology written today. Like Thor finished his battle at Ragnarok and went across the Rainbow Bridge to plug in his hammer so it'd be charged in the morning. Maybe he uses a Qi charger. Maybe he like puts it, no, that would probably break the charger. Finally, the post asks the question, can you guess what feature we're gonna add to complete your gaming experience? The one I want is anytime you pick it up, it just shouts,
Hammer time!
That's it for hardware news this week. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe for more. We have a ton of stuff coming up. As always, you can go to store.gamersaccess.net to grab stuff from the store to help us out directly. Get shirts, mod mats, PC building parts, like our soldering and project mats or more. And we'll see you all next time.